You're listening to Best Forevers, a podcast for kindred spirits, a podcast that encourages you to love more on your friends and to further consider the issues that plague friendships. I'm Alysa Lucas, and last week I told you I was obsessed with Game of Thrones, and it's accurate because this is part 2 of a long-ass episode with Haley. Hi, Haley.
Hi.
So we talked so much about Game of Thrones that this episode had to be split into 2. How do you feel about that?
I feel great about it. I feel like it could have been another couple hours because there's just so much to talk about. So
yeah, this has been a joyful afternoon talking about Game of Thrones for not just 2 hours while recording, but also like an hour at Noodles and Company beforehand.
Needless to say, we are ready for next week's premiere.
Yes,
so.
Exactly. So here's the thing, folks. This is part 2 of the Game of Thrones Best Forevers episode. And so I hope that you enjoy it. And Haley and I want to hear what you think about the friendships that we talked about. Do you think we missed any of the friendships? And we also want to know what you think is going to happen. And you can do that by messaging me on social media at Best Forevers Pod on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and emailing me at bestforeverspod@gmail.com, because Haley and I are going to get together to look through your responses, but we'll also talk about what happens after the 6th episode and if friendship got whoever makes it to the Iron Throne got them there. So here is the second part of Best Forevers. That leads us into our final grouping, and that is you can't talk about the Game of Thrones without having toxic friendships or toxic anything, because as we talked about, there's a lot of murder, trigger warning in terms of torture and rape, and lots of murders at weddings, and then, of course, as we've talked about a couple times, incest. And there's just a lot of things going on, and a lot of it comes with this realm that we would probably see. It's not quite civilized, right? Mm-hmm. Like they're, in terms of the world that we live in, and so it's, ride or die, ride your horse or die. Right?
Yes.
Like there's a lot of things that it's just like people get murdered for or shamed for doing things that a lot of people do. So there's a lot of judgment on sins and violations and crimes. And sometimes it's like, oh, how do you have the right to make those decisions? And it's just like, well, I was born into it. I'm Joffrey.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like if you watch Gossip Girl, because I'm Chuck Bass, right? Yeah. Like that's like the reasoning is because I'm this person. And so there's a lot of awful things. And I think most of them, this is interesting, is deals with the Stark House.
Yes.
And the Stark House is where we start in season 1. And we follow, most of the characters are the primary characters of the show. I read an article that I'll include in my show notes because it gives you the whole world to understand it if you like more background on the different houses and things like that. But it talked about like the Starks are the heroes of our story. Yeah. And I think that's why I love Jon so much, because he's like the best person. I love Ned Stark, who had his head cut off by Joffrey, because I think if he had been the king, he would have ruled the world in a good intentioned way. Mm-hmm. He had Catelyn, his wife, on his side, and he had lots of sons and daughters that would have been are good people. And you have Bran, who's like this ungodly, or he has this godly person, and you have Jon Snow, who's like this protector and sword, and Sansa's grown up into someone who can really make decisions, and Arya's now an assassin. Like they would have had their shit on lockdown. However, had that been the case in the first place, I don't think any of those characters would be where they are now. Like Arya wouldn't be an assassin. Sansa would probably just, I don't want to say this, but in this world, that's what it is. She would just be married.
Yeah.
Oh, Ferguson's coming back, and he is up in Haley's business. So let's talk about, should we talk about Ned's toxic friendship first with Robert?
Let's go to the beginning.
Yes.
So
we almost should have started with the toxic friendships.
Right. Because it really defines everything, right? Like,
yes.
It sets everyone on this path. So Ned Stark, his best friend with Robert Baratheon, who was initially the king. So he was the king of the Iron Throne. And they had been friends since like they fought alongside each other. Mm-hmm. And also Robert was and still is in love with Ned's sister. So, but in that element of trust is there. And because Ned is this great person, he is going to say yes and be loyal to Robert whenever Robert asks him to be the hand of the king.
Yeah.
And that's what sets everything in motion because he made that choice. He brought his family to King's Landing, split his family up. And from that moment forward, the Starks were no more. Like they were all spread out.
Robert, you're the worst.
And then Robert, though, he is well-intentioned, I would say. Like but also super clouded and just like fighting and, you know, sleeping with other women and drinking a lot.
Yeah. And so you're right. He might be good intention, but he's also at this time married to Cersei. And then she's having the relationship with her brother who killed the previous king. And then he thinks that his son is Joffrey, but it's Jaime's son. And so it's like you have these other people sort of making decisions. He's just sort of like the headpiece, if you will, in a lot of ways. And that maybe if he was paid a little bit more attention to what was going on, his good intentions could have got Cersei and Joffrey right the fuck out of King's Landing. Yeah. I keep saying they're the worst.
They are. Well, but also,
can I come up with any other descriptor terms other than they're the worst?
The absolute worst.
Yeah. And thank you for agreeing with me.
Robert he feeds into that though because he's a negligent king.
Yeah.
And he doesn't take it seriously. And I think that, you know, Ned, had he stayed, he kept Robert grounded, and Robert, to his credit, would listen to Ned.
Yeah.
And over like all the Lannisters in his ear of wanting something else. And I think that he also kind of just like didn't want to deal with the Lannister bullshit.
Because they're the worst.
They are, because they're the worst. And they just like, they're on their stuff the whole time. And he kind of just like, they're like a gnat in his ear, and he just ignores it and does whatever he wants. But, you know, in the end, whenever it was super telling too, because once he died, there was no protection against Ned anymore.
Yeah.
And that's what he gets for trusting him.
Yeah. And that's the thing is like, Ned was a good person overall and had paid attention and had good intentions. So he was much more attentive and aware of things than Robert was. And I think that him coming to King's Landing was a threat to the Lannisters.
Yeah.
And so once he agreed to go there, you're right, the Starks were no more because the Lannisters didn't want him there to ruin their plans or their good time or what they were going to do. And so the toxic friendship, I think, comes in is that because Robert doesn't pay attention. He's lazy. He's a lazy king.
He's very lazy.
And it's almost like he brought in Ned because he knew Ned would make him better, but he didn't account for the fact that he was married to Cersei, and that includes Jaime and Joffrey and their father and Tyrion, who I also think is overall a good person, but he's also generally lazy. He's interested in drinking and in women, and he's been rejected. So I think he's found more of a place with Dany as her, as the hand to the queen. But I think that when you allow people to be the worst, you're like he was enabling them, I think.
Yeah.
And so that made him a horrible friend to Ned because Ned was never protected.
Right.
And so yeah, and then I don't even think Ned was allowed to go on that hunting trip where, quote unquote, Robert died.
Yeah.
I.e. murdered.
Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun. And so I think that's right. Ned couldn't be there because here's the thing. He'd still be alive if Ned was there.
Yeah.
And they know that. And so in a way, him, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, is just that is probably what got Ned killed, was because he was a good person and was competent at the role that he had.
Yeah. R.I.P. Ned.
R.I.P. And R.I.P. Sean Bean, because that bro can never survive a TV series. So the next Stark we need to talk about is his wife.
Catelyn.
And her relationship with one of the best / manipulative characters on the show, and that is Littlefinger. And for those of you who've watched The Wire, he was Tom Carcetti, who is the corrupt mayor on the show. And so this guy plays swarmy, skeezy.
He's a snake personified.
Yes, he's typecast.
Yes.
And so he, perhaps Robert set a lot of things in motion by bringing Ned and half of the Starks to King's Landing. But it's truly Littlefinger of why this entire show exists.
Yes,
or the story exists.
Which is so
this
brilliant.
little skeezy MF
yes.
is the reason why all this shit happened.
He is.
And
he is. And there's like, I appreciate watching it back from the beginning too, because you can see those subtle things that he's the puppet master.
Yeah.
He's pulling the strings on everything, and he doesn't have loyalty to anyone but himself.
Dude, he would so win a season of Survivor, Big Brother. He would just be the one that was he's just like crafting all the big plays and the blind sides, because that's basically what he did in this realm. And so what is the first thing that you think he did that set things in motion?
Well, the first thing is, and going back to his relationship with Catelyn, and I will say, I do believe that he loves her.
Yeah, it's another case of unrequited love, because Catelyn is with Ned, obviously, right. And he's loved her for a very long time. And I do believe that he loved her as well. Yeah. But I think that there was so much pain in the fact that he was rejected or would never sort of, quote unquote, have her. I don't like to talk about people as possessions, but like would never be in a relationship with her, that then I think he did things to sort of protect himself and take it out on her and the people that she loved. Bastard.
He is. And so he, I think that his first step was using those relationships, and particularly so Lysa, Catelyn's sister, was so in love with Littlefinger and so jealous of Catelyn that he really played on that relationship and played with her love for him and knew it and manipulated it so that she sent that raven to Catelyn that was claiming that her husband had been killed by the Lannisters, who was the hand of the king previously before Ned Stark. So that's what set Ned in motion of becoming the hand, and Catelyn coming to see Lysa, and just all of the wheels started spinning that really set them on the path that they were on now.
And so here's the thing. We've said quite clearly in this episode that a lot of the Lannisters are the worst. But this was one thing they didn't do.
True. And he knew
But he plays off the reputation of these awful people. And so, of course, it's like, those fucking, those Lannisters, we're going to get them. And so it's like that, I think, when you know someone is going to have that reputation, that you can really play him.
Yeah. When he knows the ins and outs of every house. He has his brothel, so he hears people's secrets. He knows who's coming in and who's coming out. He's got eyes everywhere. He's got Viserys.
Is that the...
Yeah. So he has all of his little birds.
Yes.
And so he's very much in tune with that. So he's got eyes everywhere.
Yeah.
And really the relationships in the capital with the right people to know all the secrets of the realm.
And actually, we might go back because, and people can correct me if I'm wrong, and I didn't look this up. This is just sort of off the cuff, but I actually think that Joffrey was a psychopath because I believe that psychopaths are more aggressive. Littlefinger is a sociopath because in a lot of ways he could fit in and talk to people enough for them to trust him, where Joffrey couldn't do any of that shit. No one liked him. He was the worst, remember? And so I think that if that's a clear difference between the two, that would separate them. Like, Littlefinger is smart, but he's skeezy, and I think for a lot of people, they don't realize how skeezy he is until it's too late.
Yeah. Until
he gets played.
Stark sisters.
He gets played.
The heroes we all need. And even up until the very end, he is smart and he plays with relationships. And so he tried to pit them against each other. And because he's so good at it and has been good at it all, like we've seen him do this every single season, I really believed up until it was the very end that they really were pitted against each other. Yeah.
So Sansa has grown into this position, and Jon Snow has gone to talk to the Mother of Dragons and the Khaleesi and the Breaker of Chains and all other 23 other titles. Yeah. And so she is in charge of Winterfell, which they've taken back from Ramsay Bolton, who we'll talk about in a minute. And so she's in charge, and Arya's gotten there, but it seems like they're playing off this idea that, like, Sansa is not really trusting Jon right now, and because of Littlefinger, and that she starts to mistrust or distrust, I don't know what the right term is, Arya, because of her faces and of the weapons that she has. But it's actually the weapon she has that brings it all together, because that knife that she carries was meant to kill Bran Stark after he fell, pushed out of the tower, and that knife belonged to Littlefinger. And so Arya handing that to, I can't remember, did Sansa give it to her or vice versa? That was the connector, but until Arya steps in front of Sansa, we think that Arya is about to meet her death at the hands of her sister because of betrayal. And then when it turns over to Littlefinger, I was like, oh, you just got played, boy.
Yeah.
Oh.
Played the player.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, like, that's one of my favorite deaths, because I was like, this MFer who's been the puppet master this whole time got played and had no idea. And it was by two young women, might I add, which probably was like, that didn't happen then.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, or at least that wasn't respected, but shit. But yeah, he betrays Catelyn by doing all of that. And so his friendship is just toxic to everyone because he is so manipulative to everyone, right? And so it's just, he's the worst. Which leads us to, again, we have the Stark sons now. And Theon. And Theon is from the House of Greyjoy. And from some matters, he becomes, what's the terminology? He comes to Winterfell.
He's their ward. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. And so he has been raised with the Stark boys. Yeah. But there's a lot of sort of competition there, I think.
And jealousy.
And jealousy, like wanting, and envy, I would think, too. Because there's probably, like, some jealousy wanting to have a dad, like, having a relationship with a dad like Ned Stark. Wanting to be more like them. Because they're pretty... I mean, at that time, I can imagine it was wanted or more typical to have sort of masculine, like Robb and Jon are very masculine, strong fighters and protectors, sort of like the quote-unquote what you would list as, like, masculine. And Theon didn't have that. And I think in a lot of ways he felt mistreated and left out and rejected. And so he decides to... get them.
Yeah, he takes over Winterfell. So once everyone's gone, Theon takes over Winterfell, and he appears to have burned alive Bran and Rickon Stark, but it was actually just some farm boys. And
Poor farm boys.
And so really just all of the trust is broken. And so someone who was raised and as friendship and as a brother to this family, that just kind of manifested in the worst ways. And in order, he believes, to get the loyalty back to his house and to be appreciated in the way that he's always wanted by his father and his house, is to take over Winterfell, and it ends up kind of biting him in the ass.
Well, and I think, so I have two thoughts about Theon, which I don't like him, but what ends up happening to him shouldn't happen to anyone.
No.
Not even Joffrey.
The worst.
Yeah, like, he is tortured by Ramsay Bolton, and I think no one deserves what he received. Basically, Ramsay just gets to the point where, I mean, in his head, he's in a dog cage like the other dogs, and, like, Ramsay is his owner and can only respond basically, like, to the calls of dogs, right? And he basically emasculates him.
Yeah.
Literally
cuts his dick off.
Cuts his penis off. Is gone, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, for any man, whether high or low on masculinity in terms of, like, how you see the Stark boys or this, that, and the other thing, I think pretty much anyone. It would probably be the same thing when women who identify or people who identify as women like lose their breasts or have any damage. It just completely dehumanizes them, and it's just like some of the worst things that could happen. So although I don't like what Theon did, I don't think that should ever happen to him. But I think part of the miscalculation of Theon in terms of trying to take back Winterfell and try to prove himself was that I think he was treated by the Starks like family.
Yeah.
But he didn't see it that way. And so I think there was a disconnect, and that the jealousy and competition and not feeling included or not being respected really sort of set him apart. But the miscalculation was, although he was treated good by them, he was not a Stark.
No.
And what I mean is all the qualities that made them Starks. The political, or not even political savvy, but more like battle savvy.
Yeah.
Having some leadership, being a leader. He didn't have any of that. So when he was trying to take it over, they're like laughing at him. Like he wasn't respected, which makes me kind of sad for him all around.
Yeah.
But I think that was the problem, is that he betrayed him, but he didn't have what you need to back up that betrayal.
Yeah.
Like Littlefinger can betray people because he backs it up with his intelligence and his ability to connect with other people. You know, like Cersei can do it because she's absolutely terrifying, right?
Yeah.
Like he is none of those things.
No.
He doesn't have the qualities for that. He would be a good soldier. He could be a good friend. He could be a good, I think, hand to someone. I think he could, I don't know, even like, I think being part of the Night Watch might have actually been good for Theon, because he would have had that brotherhood. I think he would have felt like he was included. And much like Sam, he might have developed into more of that leader, or the having some level of power and ability and courage to do what they do at the Wall. Theon, I feel like, is a complete, what's the word I'm looking for? Just like devastation of any human being. Like it just is like when you see people trying so hard at stuff and it's like they don't feel included. Like this happens a lot. If we take it to what I talk about on the podcast all the time, Theon is the person who's unable to make friends.
Yeah.
And is, because of that, is lonely, and he should have never been treated in poor ways by Ramsay, but I think he misunderstood the love from the Starks, and I think he just had some difficulty being able to bridge and make any sort of connections with other people. And I just kind of want to take him under my wing and be like, all right, buddy.
Yeah.
Let me help you.
Because he doesn't have the mentorship or the nothing that other people had.
Yeah.
So he doesn't get that character development.
Yeah. And I think if he would have stayed loyal to Rob, well, first off, he might be dead from the Red Wedding.
True.
Or maybe the Red Wedding wouldn't have happened in some ways, right? Like, I don't know. He's complete heartbreak for me, because he's the person that you want to root for, but he does awful things because he's trying to gain footing in the world and he's unable to do it. And he just doesn't have skills that other people have to connect with people, and his dad hates him. His sister makes fun of him. He feels like he's at the bottom of the totem pole. Actually, I don't want to say totem pole. Cultural appropriation. Yeah. He's at the bottom of the barrel or hierarchy of the Stark family, even though they treated him like one of their own. And God, yeah. He's number one character for heartache. Yes, he is.
He's just sad.
He's so sad.
Poor Theon.
But he's also toxic because he misunderstands everything.
He does.
So a couple other thoughts we had, like, I'm sure there's so many things else that we can say about Littlefinger, about Robert Baratheon, and of course about Theon and so many other characters, like Stannis is awful, Joffrey's awful. But I think you made an excellent point. And so this is a good way to think about wrapping up these friendships, is that a lot of people, I would think, would see this episode or listening to this episode and be like, for me, on the front of it, Game of Thrones doesn't have friendships. And I think that we've just provided a lot of support about how friendships do exist and how they exist in different ways.
Yes.
But I think that in a lot of ways, those people are also correct. That there are people who have a lack of friendships, like Theon. Although he was a toxic friend, he lacked friendships, right?
Yeah.
And that there's some other people who lack friendships. And there are 3 in particular you thought were the worst because they didn't have friends.
Yes. We mentioned these characters throughout our conversation.
Yes.
But Cersei, Joffrey, and Ramsay, arguably the worst characters on the show for a multitude of reasons, but they don't really have true friendships. And I want to talk about Cersei because she's so motivated by her relationships with her children.
Yeah.
And her relationship with Jaime to an extent, but she would, see Jaime's head on a spike before any of her kids got killed.
Joffrey, more important than Jaime.
Yeah. Everyone. All of them. All 3 of them. And you can see Cersei get more and more dangerous as each of her children dies.
Yeah.
And so once they're all dead, she's kind of at the peak of, she has nothing left to lose.
Yeah.
And she's just like at the peak of her evilness.
She's just absolutely terrifying.
Yeah.
And that's not what you want in someone who's ruling all 7 kingdoms. No. Like, I do not want her on the Iron Throne whatsoever. And I think it's really interesting that you brought that up, like, as each child passes away, starting with Joffrey, and then to the daughter, what's her name again? I feel
Marcella.
Thank you. I spend more time with Joffrey. And then her youngest kid, who becomes the king after Joffrey, Tommen.
Yeah.
He commits suicide after she basically blows up a church. But, I mean, the High Sparrow, I'm not mad about. But, like, Marjorie, the Tyrells, all the other people from their kingdom from from King's Landing.
Yeah.
And he just jumps out. He doesn't even jump. He just walks up to a window and just falls down. And she doesn't even take any responsibility for his death.
No.
And so, you could say that she probably had a hand in all of their deaths in the way that she treated people and the things that she said and that she did. And she takes 0 responsibility for it. And that you see that after all 3 children are gone and she becomes the queen.
Yep.
That's interesting, right?
Yes.
I think that's what she wanted all along. But also you see that she starts to really separate more from Jaime. And so, as we talked about before, she's not someone who makes connections with people. She's just sitting up in her tower, and it's just, I mean, she doesn't have any concept of other people. And so I think that she's now isolating her brother, that the final season, I think, will bring her death. And it's because she trusts no one. She wants to make 0 alliances. She's just terrifying. She's just absolutely terrifying.
She really is.
And so, I mean, I think that's a really important point, is that I don't think she'll get the Iron Throne because she cannot make any alliances or connections with other people. No. She can't have forced connections. She can't have negotiated connections. She didn't want to even be with them and fight for the White Walkers. And basically all she's saying is that she says she was sending her people, and she lied, and to go help with the White Walkers. And basically all she's saying is that she'll hold a truce. But she's basically going to let them all march to their death. And she thinks that she's going to just be sitting pretty in King's Landing. And I would wager a guess either A, the White Walkers make it to King's Landing and she's gone at that sense, or she will be murdered by other people because she didn't fight with them. She's not getting on the Iron Throne.
No, she's not.
One for sure.
She will die.
She has to die. Only because as a human being, you have to interact and you have to collaborate and you have to work with other people.
Yeah.
And there's no way that you're going to be able to rule an entire land if you don't have even mentorships or trusting your hand or anything like that. There's nothing that you're going to be able to do.
Yeah.
So I say good riddance to Cersei.
Yeah.
But she also raised Joffrey, who had no friendships.
No.
He was disrespectful to his family, to his grandpa, to his dad, his other dad, / uncle, all the dads, all of his siblings, all the people, all of the hands. And I think she truly raised him not to make connections with other people. She sent her daughter away to Dorne, and I think that she was able to have an entire life. And so although I don't know she wasn't in it very much, so I don't think we could see too much other than she was like
she fell in love and she's happy. Yeah.
And so being away from the Lannisters really helped her. And the youngest kid, I think, was really sweet, and no one really paid any attention to him. So I don't think they influenced him as much until Joffrey died and he had to become the king, and that he had the same sort of inklings to make connections with people, that he loved Marjorie. He really seemed to take on into the king role. I think he's so young. He was influenced by the religious figures, the High Sparrow, and that was part of his downfall. But I also think it's Cersei's fault because she tried to turn the High Sparrow, the whatever they're called, the
Sparrow.
I hate them.
Yeah.
I did not
The
like
worst.
Yeah. But you said that really showcased how religion can be dangerous if it's not used, if it's used for evil, if you will, instead of good. And so I think because Cersei was using them to get back at Marjorie, that brought the end to everyone.
Yeah.
But then it ended up, she was still a step ahead and would go further and be just as terrifying by blowing up an entire building, a church of people. Yeah, and being sure her son wasn't there so he didn't die, and then moments later he just steps out the window and he's gone.
Yeah.
But I think that it's, in a way, she raised them to be like that, but 2 of her children had inklings to wanting to be around people, and one who was just going to do anything he could to destroy people.
Yeah.
So, what do they say? The apple didn't fall
far from the tree.
Acorns, apples, whatever. And then that leads us to perhaps
Ramsay.
Yes, literally the worst.
Yeah, I don't think you can get much worse than Ramsay Bolton.
Yeah,
probably even comparing him to other villainous characters from other stories and fantasy series, really evil. Yeah, really, really evil.
And so we talked a little bit about what he did to Theon. And so he is a absolute cold to the core person who I don't think ever had a good bone in his body. I don't know if he was ever had redeemable qualities.
Well, he sort of comes out of nowhere too. Yeah. In the series, as far as the series goes, he just is sneaks up on you.
Yeah,
you don't expect this other, because we're so focused on everything that's going on in King's Landing.
Yeah,
and then not really knowing who captured Theon, and that he pretends to help Theon. And then just destroys him, the worst, most brutal physical, psychological torture. And he's not as much into the political game either. He's almost kind of in this in between of better at playing the political game than Joffrey was, but even more evil and not really giving any care for human life or people than Joffrey did.
I want to say that the difference between the two was that Joffrey was entitled.
Yeah. And Ramsay's a bastard.
Yeah. And he basically killed his dad so that he could become the king, because his dad and his new wife just had a son.
Yep.
And so killed them all.
Yeah.
Bye. Killed dad so he could become the king, killed his stepmom and his stepbrother, right? Just destroyed an entire family so that he could have the power. And so I think the difference is that Joffrey just did it because he was in it, and I think Ramsay had more of an entitlement to being in the power, in the sense of wanting it. Whereas I don't think Joffrey cared, but I don't think he thought about what it would be like not to have power.
Yeah.
Because his family always had it. And so I think that for Ramsay, being a bastard and then trying to get into that power, this is the only way in which he could do it.
Yeah.
And because I know some people say some people are born rotten. And I don't know if that's always the case or if that's true or not. I think a lot of it is environmental, but shit, the things that he would be a candidate for born rotten.
Yeah.
And then just completely destroyed by environment, but still has this confidence that he can do or be whatever he wants to be, and that he enjoys. That's something him and Joffrey have in common. They enjoy inflicting pain, but the amount of pain that Joffrey does is nowhere to the degree of what Ramsay can imagine.
Yeah.
Joffrey, I don't think, can imagine that far. I don't think he's creative or smart enough.
No.
Or cares enough, but I think Ramsay is someone who's probably got an entire plan for the ways that he can destroy people.
Yeah.
And I think that some of the things that you see is that he uses dogs in which to kill his stepmom and his stepbrother, used it to ward off Theon's sister and the army from the Greyjoys, and that you see Theon being in the cage like an animal. So I think it is sweet, sweet justice that he didn't feed the dogs on that day.
Yeah.
And that Sansa locked him up in there because bye.
Yeah.
Was Sansa the one who did that?
Yeah, she was.
Sansa got Littlefinger and Ramsay.
Yeah,
but
big things for her coming in the last season, I feel like, hopefully.
Well, another thing, obviously, because it doesn't play a role in terms of friendship, is that she was forced into marriage with Ramsay by Littlefinger and was, trigger warning here in terms of sexual assault, but was tortured on her wedding night by Ramsay Bolton.
Yeah.
So.
And on the basis of like relationships and Ramsay, just like the lack of, similar to Cersei, the lack of relationships and not really having anyone that he's truly loyal to. And every relationship that he does have is just for power or manipulation or just have someone to torture. He is more dangerous. So like, you think about like walking into the Battle of the Bastards, he has nothing to lose. Yeah. He's loyal and allegiant only to himself. Yeah. And so someone like Jon walking into that, you have all these people that you care about and then you want to protect. And so there's so much more on the line for you than for someone like Ramsay who has nothing.
And he has no connections. Like the people who are loyal to him are afraid that they're going to be tortured and murdered. Yeah. Like it's all by fear and intimidation. And I'm all like, Joffrey's the worst on Twitter. And people are like, do you not remember Ramsay? And it's like, I had gotten to the point where he started to torture Theon, but I hadn't gotten to the episodes like where Theon no longer had that name and like took his identity away from him. And basically Theon was just like another one of his dogs that responded to his direction and demands, like his dogs. That was when it really was like, this guy ain't right.
Nope.
Talk about we need more resources for care, mentally, emotionally, and physically. We definitely need it back then because Ramsay.
Right.
Yeah. Gosh. And I think on the flip side of like lack of friendship, that people who are good and do have friendships, like to your point of Jon, who has all these people he cares about and is a good person and has built all these relationships, that he has more to lose in the Battle of the Bastards in comparison to Ramsay. And I think he gets that from, well, we think his dad. Yeah. Spoiler alert. We'll let you check out the end of season 7 where we discover he is not, in fact, a bastard.
Nope.
And
he is half Stark, though.
He is half Stark, but he's not a bastard. Okay, well, I feel like, we've already talked about incest, so Dany is his aunt.
Yep.
Awkward.
Somebody let him know.
Oh my God, are they going to tell him?
I know. He still doesn't even know.
Neither of them know.
Yeah.
Awkward. And I like how everyone finds out as they're, like, I know they've edited it for television to make it, like, more dramatic, but I swear to God they edited it with, like, their first sex scene, and I was like,
yeah.
Really? You're, like, finding out right now? Like, right, this was the moment. This is the moment for reveal. I was like, okay. But I think he gets a lot of his qualities from Ned Stark.
Yeah.
And I think the reason why Ned died so soon into the series is because he was a friend to people, and that's what got him killed.
Yeah.
So it's almost like we have these different types of friendships. We have true friendships, we have allies and mentorships, and then we have toxic friendships, and that there are people without friends, and that causes them a lot of problems. And then people who are a friend to everyone, it causes them problems. So, whether you thought about it or not, there are a lot of friendships, a lot of discussion of friendship here. And we're almost at 2 hours.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Oh my God. Our day has gone away because we're just talking about Game of Thrones.
There's so much.
What are you going to do? See, there's so much friendship in Game of Thrones that you have to consider it because thinking about how everything plays out is based on betrayals or based on loyalty, and whoever gets on the Iron Throne, well, maybe you and I should come back together and talk about if friendship got them there or not.
Oh, yes. Great idea.
Okay.
Love to come back.
Oh, I would love to. I mean, we could just come back and talk about Game of Thrones, but yeah, we'll record some of it too. But I think even though we're running longer than I think either one of us anticipated, but I think it doesn't feel like we've been talking for 2 hours.
Not at all.
And Ferguson is like waiting for us to be over. Like, this has been 2 hours. Look at his face. Literally, it's been 2 hours. I've been keeping track. But I still want to talk about who our favorite characters are.
Yeah.
And I do want to talk about what we think is going to happen.
Okay.
So let's start with characters. Okay, so we can do our best to do a top 5.
Okay, I can do that.
And then I know you said you have a top 10, so maybe I'll get that information from you and we can post our top 10 for to post on social media.
Yes.
Okay. So I'll go first because I know you have, I think your list is like more, you're like really thinking about it. In my top 5, and I don't know if I'm going to order these yet, so maybe I'll order them in time for social media. But I do really enjoy Jon Snow because I think he is the moral compass of the show, and without it, everyone's awful. Because even Arya and Sansa have become, like, Arya's an assassin, right? Like, I think that, I know people say, well, he's a killer, but he does it in which to protect people and in war. And I'm not saying that those things are necessarily right, but I think they're more justified than the other reasons that people have. So I definitely think he's our moral compass. Okay. Oh my God. Can I have bad people on my list
yes,
too?
Absolutely.
Because I think Littlefinger, although I hate him, I think he's such an awesome character because he really, like, you don't expect him to do everything that he does. He's so smart, but he uses it for evil instead of good. And it's almost like, dude, you could have been on the Iron Throne had you been a little bit smarter about these things and found another way to do it. So I have Jon Snow, I have Littlefinger, Jaime Lannister.
Yes. I was waiting for it.
It's not because he's handsome, but as Haley and I have talked about, I think he has made one of the more profound changes. And I think that I want him to defeat his sister.
Yes.
And his lover. So I think that he is a true, he at the heart of it is someone who wants to protect and live. Like, I think that's the thing, is that he will care enough about people so that everyone can live. And he did everything he could to protect his children. You know, his daughter going all the way over to Dorne. So Jaime's on my list. Brienne.
Yes.
The Rejected Knight is someone I wish I had in my life because everyone needs that kind of loyalty. I also, as someone who teaches gender communication, I do have mad respect for anyone, especially because you said this is at any of their time. Like, it's not necessarily a time, but I think it reflects sort of like a medieval time, or like you said, Lord of the Rings. And typically what you're going to see then is that men are the focus, men are in power and that sort of thing. And I think that her ability to stay strong and loyal despite all of those rejections and people laughing at her because she is a knight that is also a woman. But then it's like she proves them all wrong. And again, she shouldn't have to prove anyone wrong, but her abilities, she's probably if not one of the best sword fighters on the show.
Oh, yeah.
I think, like, if Jaime had his good hand, because it got cut off by the Boltons, mind you.
Yes.
It's fucking family, man.
Yeah.
The worst. That, even with his good hand, I think Brienne would win.
Yeah.
Okay, and then 5th, is Arya.
Yeah.
Because I see a lot of Brienne in her as well. Or that she's, like, I think that would be a good mentorship. I think that her ability to stay alive and stay strong and be able to do all these things, like become an assassin, she is going to be quite powerful. And I'll be really interested to see what happens to her. So I think that's my top 5.
Okay, that's
not
good.
in order.
We have some overlap too. So
not in order.
Not in order. I can't order mine either because that'd be just like next.
We'll just do
impossible.
an alphabetical order on social media then.
So Tyrion is definitely my top 5.
He's 6 for me. He's the 6th man on the bench.
He's got to be he's up there for me for sure. Just because I really appreciate his intellect. I think that he just plays it so smart, and also he is fiercely loyal to the people but he's also smart about where he invests his loyalty.
Yeah. He's also reasonable.
He is. He's that voice of reason, and just like he keeps it grounded, like he really just is that brings that intellect, and he has a lot of growth himself because at the beginning, he's just riding up to Winterfell with them and kind of doesn't really give a shit. He's about, drinking and women, and kind of has that Lannister mentality, even though he's looked down upon by them. But he really does overcome that and becomes the hand of the queen. Yeah. And I expect really big things for him, hopefully, in the final.
Yeah, and, it's like one of those things like, oh, can I do my list over again? And so I think, because I do have one evil character in there, I would trade Littlefinger out for Tyrion because I think he is ultimately good. Yeah. But I would definitely say, character-wise, he's in the top 10 for sure. But as actor-wise, he's probably in the top 2.
Oh,
yeah,
absolutely.
like he's probably top 1. He's the best actor on the show for sure.
Fantastic.
So you made me feel bad, but continue.
Okay. Lady Olenna, I love Lady Olenna. I think that she is just tells it like it is. Yeah. Like she has the political savvy, but she just is so authentic and just straight up with people, which I really appreciate because everyone tries to be so slimy and is. And just like she is very upfront and just kind of lays it all on the table and has the best death. I mean, come on. Like, it was me. I really want to get that t-shirt. But she's just a badass. She's amazing. So best grandma. She's like the cool. Yeah. She's like the Betty White of Westeros. Like,
well, I also was thinking, oh gosh, I'm blanking on the character's name, but Maggie Smith's character on Downton Abbey.
Oh yeah,
like the Doubt. Oh, what is it called? I'm blanking on the names, but she just kind of like, what is the weekend?
Yeah,
like, it's just like, what is happening? But but I mean, obviously, Downton Abbey is a whole nother political scene than what
but that character, it's so needed, honestly, in the mess of everything. Like, you need that person, and so I just love her for that. Next, I would probably say Arya Stark for many of the reasons that you mentioned, but she just really personifies like survival, and she just does that, and she rises up and comes back, and you just can't get Arya Stark. Like, she's gonna make it to the very end, and I love the actress who plays her. I just think that she's just a fantastic representation of youth and being a young woman, but also breaking those gender barriers. Yeah. So I think that she's wonderful. Who else? I've got 2 more.
Yes.
Okay, so Jaime is definitely in my top 2.
Hello.
Because Jaime, I think he's grown the most, and I really hope that he has. Just always find myself rooting for Jaime Lannister since season 3. I'm always rooting for him. So I really want to see him have some sort of happy ending if that's possible at this point.
I really want to see him and Tyrion take down Cersei.
I would love that. And I don't know if he's going to break that bond. Yeah. But I want to see him also, like, I want him to flip allegiance. Yeah. I really want him to be in with, like, whether that's Jon making it to the throne or Dany and him being, pledging allegiance to them. I think that would be really cool. Bend that knee. Come on, Jaime. And then my last is Daenerys, because I think that she also really shows that growth. I think she's a strong female representation. I think that her character, just even beyond the series, like, has become just this really this great representation for women, and people can really rally behind her. And I'm excited to see what happens for her in the finale, because she's just, I mean, you think of Game of Thrones, you think of Daenerys,
the mother of dragons.
Khaleesi.
Can I have the dragons on my list? Because I love them.
All 3 of them. 1, 2, 3, boom, boom, boom. And then 2 extra.
Oh God, I love it. And the thing is, I literally look at the dragons like a domesticated, like my cats are my family. Like they're my best friends and they're my babies and that sort of thing. And so when one of them dies and then becomes a snow dragon, I was like most upset that I ever had been. I was like, no, one of her dragons. Yeah. So she's in my top 10. I just, oh gosh, I think part of it is I want Jon Snow to win, and then I realized that she was his aunt, and I was like, okay, I don't know how that's gonna work. So I guess that leads us to, what do we think is gonna happen?
I think it's gonna be something unexpected. Like I want to say, it's either gonna be Jon or Dany, but then I don't know. I think that neither one of them are gonna get out of it alive. I think either Jon or Daenerys is going to die. Yeah. That's for sure. But also she's the last of the Targaryen line. Yeah. Well, they're both the last of the Targaryen line. So.
But she thinks she's the last.
She thinks that she's the last, and the realm thinks that she's the last. Yeah. So, I think it's going to be one or the other. I don't think that they both make it out of this.
And Jon is already living on borrowed time because he was murdered and then brought back by Witchy McWitcherson. Yeah. What's her name? The red lady?
The red woman?
Yes.
Melisandre or something.
If I had my way, Cersei gets it from Tyrion or Jaime, because I think Tyrion might have more reason, but I think there's more I don't know where more satisfaction comes from, if it's Tyrion or Jaime.
It'd be more shocking if it was Jaime.
Yes. I think that's it. Like, Tyrion, there's more like, get it, type of thing. But I think with Jaime, that would be the shift of allegiance. Because I think that her not telling him, like, he's actually planning taking his people up to fight in the north. And he's literally planning, and she comes in like, what are you doing? Yeah. Right? And so she cannot, as we talked about, she cannot be on the Iron Throne. And she has to meet a very satisfying end for being such a terrifying person. Yes. And because of her lack of friendship, I don't think it's going to happen. And if I had it my way, it would be Jon Snow on the throne, because then it is the Starks, who we started with, that we end with, and they are the heroes of our story. And I think Jaime would be an excellent lead to their army, and maybe but Tyrion, okay. Can the Mother of Dragons, wait, no, what's the little girl from the north? The one that's like the baddest ass girl? Yeah. If she can't be on the throne. True. She's a badass. She is. She was on screen for like 30 seconds, and I was like, she just won this whole series for me. Like, she is a badass. Yeah. She might be in my top 10. But yeah, I think you're right that Dany or Jon, both of them don't make it out, and whoever is standing is the one that's on the throne.
Right. And that's going to determine a lot of where the other players land up.
Exactly. And so I think with Dany, you'll see Tyrion perhaps still be there.
Be the hand.
But if it's Jon, I think you'll see the Lannister, like the Jaime side of the Lannisters.
Yeah. And then I think that Sansa stays the Lady of Winterfell.
Do you think Arya stays with her sister?
Arya, maybe, but I also think that Arya's at this point of her development as a character, that she's not going to have, like, she's never wanted the position of power. Yeah. She's never been appealed to her. Lady. She doesn't want to be the lady. She doesn't want to be the queen. Yeah. She doesn't want any of that. So I think that she just kind of has, her allegiance and loyalty to her family, and she still cares for them, but she's just going to be continuing to move and seeking out her next adventure.
Yeah. Well, or maybe not being the Lady of Winterfell, but maybe she's like the Jaime Lannister. Yeah. Like where she leads the army. Yeah. You know what I mean?
She's going to be fighting for sure.
What do you think? Who do you think is going to meet their death in season 8 besides everyone?
Besides everyone dies. The snow dragon freezes everyone.
Oh my God,
that's another thing. There's a lot. Like, they got a lot to do. Like, we got a lot to do in 6 episodes. So
yeah, every single one I think is gonna be like a full length movie though, because it has to be.
It's gonna be.
I think that they do end up defeating the White Walkers. So I think
Yeah.
we're talking about, because I don't think they'd be fighting for the throne. And I think from the article I read that the White Walkers existed before, and
Right.
they were handled then.
Yeah,
like
they were
Olivia
kept out,
Pope,
but
they
not
were handled.
destroyed.
Yeah.
And then they've also said, like, it doesn't go anywhere beyond, like, it ends here. Like,
Yeah.
the story ends. I think that there's still some potential for maybe doing, like, a prequel of, like, when the Mad King was killed and all of the story of that happened before where we are now.
Yeah.
But I think it ends. Like, there's going to be closure.
I don't think, we're talking about people who we think are going to live. I don't think Cersei is going to be the only one who dies.
No.
Right? That's the thing. Like, like what happens to Theon? I think he ends up dying.
Right.
I think Bronn, if he dies, is going to have like a really sad death.
Yeah.
I think Unrequited Love dude from Dany, I think he's done. What's his name again?
Jorah.
Yeah.
Mormont.
Yeah, he's done.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the show is capitalized and known for
Killing
off their characters and
Yeah.
shocking deaths and surprises. Like, I think Ned Stark's death at the beginning kind of set the tone for the series.
Yeah, that's why I don't think all the Stark sisters are going to make it out, though, now that we're talking about it. And I think Arya fighting would have if she did die, would have a very sort of hero's death. I think Brienne might die in fighting.
Yeah.
Give Bronn a castle before he dies.
Yes, please.
Let him die in his castle. And that's the thing is this is what we want to happen or what we might wager might happen. And I think it'll be really interesting for us to come back together and talk about what actually happens.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
We've covered a lot.
We have covered a lot.
And I didn't think we would be able to cover everything with thoroughness, but I think we've been more than thorough.
Yeah, pretty much so. And somewhat organized, so.
I think so. And obviously, if people haven't seen the show, this is going to be confusing AF. But if you've seen the show, hopefully you're nodding your head like, yeah. Or if you think we've missed any friendships, you can @ me on Twitter or Facebook or Instagram, and I'm Best Forevers Pod. Or you can send me an email at bestforeverspod@gmail.com, and me and Haley can look over your friendships or if you want to tell us what you think is going to happen, maybe we can cover those theories or something like that if you're interested. But really, I think when it comes down to it is that even though this might be people's favorite show and it's fantasy, that a lot of it can be applied to real life, whether we have loyal friendships, allyships, or alliances, or if we have toxic friendships in our life that we need to be careful about. And so I think that it's really, what can you take away from this and apply to your own life? Like, maybe you got a Theon in your life. If you got a Joffrey or Ramsay or Cersei, run for the effing hills. And if you got a Jon Snow or a Sam, hold them on forever. Yes. Don't let them go. Oh my goodness. So until next time, friends, think about your loyal friends, your allies, and perhaps toxic friends, because without our friends, who would we be? Thanks for listening to Best Forevers. If you like what you hear, be sure to subscribe, rate, review, and of course, share with a friend. Please be sure to follow Best Forevers on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Best Forevers Pod, and I'm at Dr. Alysa Lucas on Twitter. You can always find the podcast webpage for more information at bestforeverspod.com, and share your stories of friendship by emailing me at bestforeverspod@gmail.com. And if you'd like to support the movement to love on our friends more, check out the podcast on patreon.com/bestforeverspod. Now, friends, check out this recommended podcast that you must get in your ear holes immediately.
This is Mandy from Caster Quest, and we're inviting you to join us as we explore Patrick Rothfuss's best-selling fantasy series, The Kingkiller Chronicle. You can find Caster Quest at casterquest.com, on SoundCloud, on Apple Podcasts, or at our podcast network at esopodcast.com.
Research and Chandrian, Ambrose Jack is Dumbledore, Denna's on a date. Master Kilvin, old-ass mayonnaise, selling lamps to folks in Imre, Will and Simon, Deox, Stanchion, Tabalin the Great.